I'm a truck driver and I work for a company that finds me deliveries to do. They schedule everything with all the other companies, and I just pick up and deliver whatever and whenever I'm told. It can get pretty stressful sometimes when I get booked for a lot of shorter deliveries back to back, but this one was a long cross-country delivery, so I was looking forward to just driving and not worrying too much about anything else. I was heading from the West Coast to the East Coast and was on my second full day. I was planning on driving from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. I'm not too picky on where I sleep. I usually just pull off at the nearest truck stop, so there was no need to plan exactly what town to pull off in. Around 9 p.m., I made my last stop for the night at a small gas station. I filled up the tank and got some off-brand caffeinated drink to try out, then got back in the truck and pulled out. Now I just had 3 more hours to go, and with the road being a lot more clear, it shouldn't be too bad. I turned on some country music and just stared at the road, mostly spacing out or thinking about whatever came to mind. Then I want to say it was around 11 p.m. A sudden scratchy noise startled me out of my head. It was the radio. I had it on the same channel as other truckers, which we often use to chat while driving, though usually that's only during the day. I can't remember the last time someone was talking through it at night. I looked in my mirrors and didn't see any nearby trucks, and there was nobody in front of me either. Before I could grab the walkie, though, the scratchy noise came back, and there was a quick instant where I could hear a voice. It was only a split second, but it sounded like they were either saying hello or help before it cut out again. There's obviously a big difference between the two, so I quickly grabbed the radio and asked if someone needed something. I waited for a while, holding the radio and listening to the soft buzzing noise coming from it. There was something unnerving building up inside of me as I continued to wait and still got no response. But then my headlights lit up something on the road ahead. I slowed down and once I saw that it wasn't moving, I pulled off to the side and stopped. There was a semi-truck parked right in the middle of this one-lane highway. I knew this had to be the one I heard through the radio, as there were no other trucks out here. The way it was dangerously parked on the road was concerning, and I knew something was wrong. I thought maybe they had a sudden heart attack or a stroke or something. I don't know, it sounds kinda crazy, but that would have explained the sudden stop and call for help. I stepped out and started walking up to it. The whole road was quiet, with only the sound of the grass rustling in the wind from the endless fields on either side of the highway. I called out a few times as I hurried up, but never got a response. Then I got up to the door, which was open, and looked inside. My heart sank, and I could feel the fear creeping up inside of me. No one was in the truck. There was a jacket slung over the passenger seat, and a half-empty coffee cup in one of the cup holders, and the radio was dangling from the ceiling, but no signs of anything having happened. It was like the driver just vanished. I quickly stepped back down onto the road and looked in all directions. The sound of the grass swaying in the wind suddenly became extremely eerie. My heart was pounding, and I made the decision to not risk staying past my welcome. I hurried back to my truck and drove off, notifying the police as I did. They found the truck still there, parked in the middle of the road, and still no sign of the driver anywhere. After investigating, they figured out who was driving it and reported him as missing. They also found evidence of 3 other vehicles having been parked in the grass right by the spot the semi was at, though obviously I never saw them, and there was no way to know exactly why they were there. The search was pretty extensive for the missing driver, but they never found even a clue as to where he is, so it's very unlikely he'll ever be seen again. But whatever happened to that other trucker very well could have been me, had I been the first to arrive at that area. Since then, I've been hyper aware of any sketchy situations, and hope to never be involved in something like that again. I've been a trucker for close to 15 years now. This happened to me in 2017. I was driving an overnight haul through the Mojave Desert in California, headed for a destination in Arizona. I think I was delivering appliances. I don't really remember. It was pitch black darkness in every direction. The headlights on my semi were really dim at the time, and I had been putting off getting them fixed forever. Usually I couldn't tell the difference, but since there were basically no other cars on the road, it was much more obvious. I remember having to strain my eyes every few minutes to make out the road in the distance. That could have been a horror story in of itself. I was debating pulling over for a couple hours and waiting for sunrise, but I didn't want to waste my time. I desperately needed the money at the time, so I kept driving even though it wasn't fully safe. I figured since it was basically a straight line, it would be okay. I think it was about an hour before sunrise when I saw something approaching fast in the distance. Worried about hitting an animal, I slammed on the brakes. As my truck screeched to a stop, I realized what was in front of me. A car with its hazards on. The weird thing was that it was in the exact middle of the road, like literally on the double yellow. What was even weirder was that the passenger door was wide open. My truck stopped maybe a foot before hitting it. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm a pretty fearless guy, and I know my way around a bar fight. Because of this, I wasn't really scared when I saw the car. I was more curious than anything. I thought maybe someone needed a jump or something, so I reversed the semi and pulled over. I thought about throwing some flares down, but decided against it since I hadn't seen a single other car on the road besides this one. I got out of my truck and made my way over to the car. It was a warm, still night. I remember thinking how strange it was that there was almost no wind. It was also really quiet that night. The faint click of the hazards was the only sound in what felt like the entire desert. I got a little closer to the car. I vividly remember that it was a new-looking red Ford Fusion. I approached the car a little cautiously. Like I said, the passenger door was wide open. I walked around the car and stopped in my tracks. It was completely empty. I made sure of it too, checking the back seat and anywhere someone might be laying down. There was literally no one inside. All of a sudden, I was much less sure about the situation. I was expecting someone to need help of some sort, maybe even someone who took a nap in a really dumb spot. I certainly wasn't expecting this though. The car was literally empty. I cast a few glances over my shoulder, feeling a lot more uneasy now. I kept whipping my head around, looking in every direction. I felt like someone was going to charge me or something. The problem was it was so dark that I couldn't see that far in front of me, except for what was lit up by my truck's headlights. It was eerie. I waited a while longer, thinking about getting back in my truck and forgetting about this whole thing. Someone was out there. Somewhere. Against my better judgment, I decided to keep investigating. I looked inside the car, but everything seemed completely normal. The key was even in the ignition, although the engine was turned off. I got back out of the car and made my way over to the trunk. Might as well have a look, I figured. I went to open it, but it wouldn't budge, locked. I grabbed the key out of the ignition and unlocked the trunk. Still though, the thing wouldn't budge. It was jammed from the inside somehow. I opened the back door and tried getting at the trunk through the back seat. To my surprise, it actually opened. There were 3 squished garbage bags back there, along with a rope that was tying the trunk closed. I remember glancing one more time over my shoulder before reaching for them. The coast was clear. I must have been within 5 inches from one of the bags when the loudest gunshot I've ever heard rang out into the night. I slammed my head on the roof of the car in shock. I didn't even think. I threw the keys on the front seat and got out of the car as fast as I could. As I was climbing into my semi, I heard a grungy voice yelling in the distance. He yelled "hey" a bunch of times, and his voice seemed to be quickly approaching. I scrambled into the semi and turned it on. I threw it in gear as fast as I could. I remember cursing a bunch of times as the engine initially stalled, and that's when I saw it. As my truck began pulling out, I saw a person standing at the trunk of the car. It was a short, husky guy with red hair. He was wearing overalls and shin-high boots. In his left hand, he was holding a small shovel. In his right, though, was an old-looking hunting rifle. We locked eyes for a few seconds. As my truck began to drive past him, he didn't move. I remember him not looking crazy or anything. He had this worried look on his face. As I passed him, he dropped his shovel and started waving his hands. He yelled "wait" a few times, but I wasn't staying there another second. As I drove away, I watched in the rearview mirror as he ran after my truck for a few seconds before sprinting back to his car. It was clear he wanted me to stop, but there was absolutely no way I was going to do that. I stepped on it, pushing the semi much faster than I should have. I drove for like 5 minutes and started to think I was in the clear, but then I saw headlights fast approaching behind me. I remember feeling more scared than I have ever felt in my entire life. I called the police and told them what happened to the best of my ability. That's when the car was basically right on my tail. It started honking like crazy at me. I honestly didn't know what to do, so I just kept driving, praying to God he wouldn't try and ram me. After like 15 minutes of this, he cut in front of me and hit his brakes, forcing me to slow down. I was just about to crash into him when finally some flashing police lights appeared ahead. The Ford veered off to the right and sped into the desert, disappearing from sight. I pulled over and waited for the officer to show up. I frantically told him what had happened, but the useless cop decided to get a report from me rather than chase the guy down. I was so pissed about that. I told the guy like twice that he could probably catch up to him if he left now. The cop told me not to worry and that they'd do a thorough search as soon as backup arrived. He sent me on my way and said they'd call me if they ever had an update for me. They never did. None of my buddies have a story this crazy, and I've told it more times than I can count. I know what you're probably thinking. That guy was definitely burying bodies. That doesn't really explain why he had such a small shovel or why he tried to follow me. The bags in his trunk were also too small for that, although some of my buddies think he might have done some dismembering. For my own sanity, I like to think that he was burying some other kind of animal. Maybe putting a diseased dog out of its misery, or some dangerous snakes. I really have no idea. Either way, I've never been totally comfortable driving through deserts late at night after this experience. I've been on the road for nearly 30 years. It gets into your system after a bit, a strange kind of peace you settle into once you've been doing it long enough. Drive, stop, sleep, repeat. You learn the roads like old friends, know which truck stops have decent food, which rest areas are too sketchy to park in, and more than anything, you learn how to be alone. Not just comfortable with it, but protective of it. That kind of solitude gets in your bones. It teaches you to trust your instincts and never second-guess them. It was early December 2019. South Dakota was already knee-deep in winter, and I just finished a long haul from Kansas City. My rig was heavy with a shipment of steel coil, and I was making my way toward Billings. Roads were decent, but the forecast was talking about wind gusts and freezing temps overnight, so I decided to pull off early and play it safe. I found a rest area off I-90, just outside Rapid City. Remote enough to be quiet, but well lit and clean. One other truck was parked toward the far end, engine off. I backed into a space close to the building facing the highway, set the brakes, did a quick walk around. All good. The snow was coming down harder than I expected. flurries blowing sideways under the parking lot lights. Back in the cab, I fired up the dash cooker and heated a can of beef stew. Cracked the windows just a little for ventilation. Wrapped up in my flannel and hoodie, eating straight from the can while the radio whispered some old AM station static and distant country music. It was peaceful, familiar, until it wasn't. Then came the knock, hard, desperate, driver's side door. I sat there frozen for half a second. That knock wasn't casual. It was panicked, sloppy, and loud. Echoing through the cold, I pulled the curtain aside just a little and saw her. Teenage girl, maybe 16, hair wet and stuck to her face. She was pounding on the door with both fists, shouting something I couldn't make out. I rolled the window down just a crack. "Please," she gasped. "Let me in." "He's coming. He's right behind me." I scanned the darkness behind her. Just snow and roadside shadows. No movement, no headlights. The snowfall was thick now, blurring the tree line and soaking everything. I've got a daughter about her age, and let me tell you, seeing a kid in that kind of panic triggers something primal, but instinct and training fight each other. You don't open your door for anyone until you're damn sure. "Who's coming?" I asked. She didn't answer, just banged her hands against the door again. "Please, please." I told her to back up so I could see. She kept pleading. Something wasn't right. Her voice was terrified, but her eyes weren't scanning. They weren't looking around like someone being chased. They were locked on me, like she was waiting for something. I reached over and hit the dash cam's quick record button, then flipped on both side mirrors and the rear spotlight. Nothing in the mirror. No one behind her. No tire tracks approaching. The storm was too loud, too chaotic. I could barely hear my own breathing, let alone footsteps in the snow. "Back up," I shouted. "Let me see." She blinked at me just once and stopped crying. That stillness, that's what shook me. Then without another word, she turned and walked away. Not ran, walked. Her figure vanished slowly into the storm, swallowed up by the wind and snow. I sat there, staring, waiting to see who might appear from the shadows. No one came. I didn't sleep much, kept the engine idling and the cabin locked up tight. At one point, I climbed into the back and grabbed my crowbar just to feel better. I left the radio on low all night and kept looking out the mirrors every few minutes. Come morning, I checked the footage. My hands were shaking as I clicked through. She hadn't run up. The dash cam caught her walking slowly toward the truck, calm like a stroll, and as she got close to the passenger side, the night vision picked up movement beneath the trailer. A figure, someone crawling flat against the ice toward the front axle, waiting beneath the cab. I hit pause, rewound, watched again. They were using her as bait. She was never being chased. She was the distraction. I reported it. State police came to meet me at the next way station. I handed over the footage. They took it seriously, said they'd had a few similar reports over the past year, especially in colder months. A decoy knocks. The driver opens the door. Someone else ambushes them from the blind side. They asked if I got a license plate, but I didn't. The girl hadn't come from a vehicle. There was no car in the lot, and whoever had been under my rig had slithered out of frame before I could get a clear shot. They never caught anyone. The footage made the rounds on a few trucker forums. A few folks said they'd seen similar setups. One guy swore he got followed out of a rest stop after a girl tried to wave him down in the rain. Another said he saw someone crawl out from beneath a trailer and vanish into the trees near Butte. After that night, I installed undercarriage motion sensors and an exterior camera rig with infrared. I don't park unless I'm in view of security cams or another driver now. I don't care how tired I am. I'd rather pull an 11-hour haul than sleep blind. I've driven through blizzards. I've seen flipped rigs, break-ins, guys tweaking out at 3 a.m. in gas station lots. But that night outside Rapid City, that's the one I think about when I close my eyes, because I've had close calls in bad weather before, but that night I wasn't fighting the storm. I was fighting something worse,